Our very first story, Vice President Dr. Mahamudu Bawumia has blamed recent depreciation of the Ghana cedi on currency speculators who took advantage of Ghana's exit from a program with the International Monetary Fund. He explains that IMF conditionalities prior to the country's exit barred the Bank of Ghana from releasing dollars into the market to ease the pressure on the local currency. In the lead-up to the 2016 election, Dr. Bawumia, as a member of the opposition, linked the poor performance of the Ghana cedi with what he said were the weak fundamentals of the economy under the then NDC administration. In his address at the town hall meeting of the economic management team here in Accra on Wednesday, Dr. Bawumia reiterated the fundamentals analogy, but insisted the economic fundamentals have been strengthened under the Akufo-Addo administration.
You will recall that I stated in 2014 that if the fundamentals are weak, the exchange rate will expose you. That was true then. That was true then, and it is true now. It is 100% correct. So if the fundamentals are weak, the exchange rate will expose you. But it is warped logic to jump from that to a conclusion that if there is depreciation in their currency, then the fundamentals must be weak. Do you understand the logic? It is very warped logic. If the fundamentals are weak, the exchange rate will expose you. But if the exchange rate moves, you cannot jump to that conclusion that the fundamentals are weak. That defies logic. That defies logic. There could be other external factors causing the exchange rate depreciation. The exchange rate depreciated by 31.3%. The fiscal deficit was 10.1% of GDP. The public debt rose to 70.2% of GDP. Inflation rose to 17%, and GDP growth had declined from 7.3% to 4%. In other words, the economic fundamentals had weakened significantly, and therefore the depreciation was easily explainable. It was not caused by dwarfs or high-rise buildings, as we were told. The exchange rate in 2014 had exposed the weak economic fundamentals.
He cited economic indicators, he says, proves that the NPP have better economic managers.
GDP growth remained robust in 2018, almost double the average in sub-Saharan Africa. The total public debt has increased from 122 billion in 2016 to 173 billion, including the cost of the banking sector cleanup at the end of 2018. However, the strong fiscal adjustment and better debt management has meant that the rate of debt accumulation, which is at 12%, excluding the banking sector cleanup, the rate of debt accumulation is at its lowest in the last decade. Inflation has dropped steadily from the high of 15.4% at the end of 2016 to 9% at the end of January 2019. This is the lowest we have seen in the last 6 years. In 2014, the exchange rate depreciated by 31.3%. The fiscal deficit was 10.1% of GDP. The public debt rose to 70.2% of GDP. Inflation rose to 17%, and GDP growth had declined from 7.3% to 4%. In other words, the economic fundamentals had weakened significantly, and therefore the depreciation was easily explainable. The data on the annual rate of depreciation of the cedi in recent years shows that the worst performance so far under the MPP government, the 8.4% depreciation that we saw in 2018, that worst performance is better than the best performance under the previous government between 2012 and 2016. So our worst is better than your best. And then you say boot for boot. This one is more like boot for Chalewote.
On the challenges with the supply of electricity, which has resulted in power outage in parts of the country, Dr. Baumia says government is working to address the problems permanently.
The takeover of ECG by PDS should help bring in much-needed investments. The Millennium Challenge Corporation Compact is expected to result in some $1 billion invested in the power sector over the next 5 years. Ladies and gentlemen, Ghana has enough gas to power all our plants without relying on imported gas. Gas is so much cheaper than liquid fuel. This is why a policy decision has been taken to switch largely to the use of gas in energy generation. However, most of our gas is in the west of Ghana, and most of our power plants are in the east. And so we have to overcome the transportation bottlenecks. But if we do this switch, which should be done this year, the estimates are that we will save about $300 million annually, just on that switch. The West African gas pipeline supplies gas from the east to the west, and this is why we are doing a reverse flow to move the gas from the west to the east. The first phase of the reverse flow will be completed this month, which will allow us to transport some 60 million scarves from the west to the east, and the the completion of this work should be done between July and August. That's the phase 2 of it, after which, fingers crossed and God willing, we should not import any gas anymore. We'll use all domestic gas. So by July, August, we will be using domestic gas, if all this thing, and which will really bring down cost of gas in this country. And of course, Car Power is also moving to the west to be the off-taker for this gas.
Energy Minister Peter Amewu, also a member of the economic management team, promised the power outages will be over very soon.
I want to assure Ghanaians and also all the listeners gathered here, the participants, that first of all, we want to apologize for this intermittent supply, but we are never back to the era where we have consistent, persistent shortfall in supply. We are in an era that there is installed capacity available, but what we need to do is to change that installed capacity to availability. Because some of the plants are still in Tema, that you cannot move. The only ones we are moving are the mobile ones. There are some that are fixed. You cannot move them. What do you have to do? Okay, those that are fixed, let's therefore move some gas from Takoradi to the fixed plant. That again is cheaper because it reduces the cost more than 7%. And so it calls for what we call the tie-in. The tie-in just allows us to be able to flow gas. Currently, we can flow gas from Nigeria through Tema to Takoradi, but you cannot flow gas in the reverse direction. So the current tie-in just allows us to move the stranded gas to Tema. By doing so, we have to stop the flow of gas. The stoppage of the flow of gas takes away almost about 650 megawatts of power plant. This explains the intermittent shortfall that we have witnessed. Fortunately, Mr. Vice President, I have an opportunity to visit the site, and I can assure the good people of this country that work is progressing. The best thing we can do is to make sure that we speed up this process. And I can assure them that by the 12th of April, we will complete the tie-in.
All right, so we have been joined in the studio by Dr. Said Bouachi. He's an economist from the Institute of Fiscal Studies, and he will be helping us with some analysis on what's been said so far. But let's continue. Let's go back to what the Vice President has been saying. He announced a raft of measures to take effect on Thursday at the port. He says should significantly ease the burden on importers and make Ghana's ports more competitive in the sub-region.
But to do so, we cannot be uncompetitive between Ghana and our next door neighbors. That is just shooting ourselves in the foot. So To reduce the incidence of smuggling and enhance revenue, the benchmark delivery values of imports will be reduced by 50%. This, however, for vehicles, the reduction will be 30%. This is because vehicles already attract an amount of depreciation, which if you factor it in, it will take you closer to the 50%. This will be effective from tomorrow.
He said that mass issuance of national identification cards, one of the strategies to digitize the economy, will take off by the end of April.
With digitization, we are introducing new and more efficient ways of doing things. We are changing the way things are done in the affected institutions for the benefits of ordinary Ghanaians. Here are a few of the reforms we have undertaken and we are undertaking in the digitization space. We have the introduction of the national ID card is a game changer, despite its teething challenges. So far, about 500,000 cards have been issued, and we've had the pilots take place in Adenta and Medina. We expect the mass issuance to commence at the end of April.
Now, the minority spokesperson on finance, Kassel Atu-Forsing, in his reaction, has chastised Vice President Bawumia for what he says are lies he churned out during Wednesday's town hall meeting on the economy. He cast doubts on the promise to reduce import duties, claiming it will be similar to the announced reduction in tariffs on spare parts. Mr. Forsing says the Vice President is struggling to gain credibility.
So pathetic in the sense that our Vice President, because he was so upstaged by the Finance Minister, he had very little to say. Our Finance Minister upstaged him in his statement to Parliament, so he had very little to say. He was more or less like reading a State of the Nation address that His Excellency the President had come to deliver. I found it mediocre. In fact, it's mediocrity at its height. At its height. I could not see anything substantial coming from the Vice President's statement. Almost everything. You heard him talk about the likes of, what do you call it, the judiciary, the court systems. What does that have to do with the economic management team? I mean, I heard, is this State of the Nation address? He had nothing to say. He was trying to play with numbers, and again, we know him and his credentials of lying with numbers, quoting GDP growth, debt to GDP, using old series and the NDC, and when it comes to his time, he's using new series. You could see lies, almost every corner. He was trying to compare debt as a percentage to GDP, and also trying to compare certain GDP numbers, and said that is A or B. That is in the coming days, maybe tomorrow afternoon, 1 o'clock, you'll hear our response in style.
50%.
Yes. But let me say that you were here when we heard our brothers and sisters from Abosokan jubilating, when they said that they have reduced import duties. He said from tomorrow, isn't it? Or from today?
From Thursday.
Okay, from Thursday. I will challenge any individual to go to the port to clear your goods and see import duties coming down by 50%.
You don't believe it?
We've seen it before, haven't we? And he himself, after he said this, he said, oh, that it seems that the policy is very popular. It's populist. We saw the same thing. It happened to Abosokan. So tomorrow, go and clear your car. I expect a 30% reduction. If you fail to get 30% reduction, again, he has lied.
All right, we'll be getting some clarity on that, this particular issue, which is the benchmark delivery values will be reduced by 50% for goods and 30% for vehicles. But right now, I'm joined in the studio, as I indicated earlier, by Dr. Said Boache. He's an economist from the Institute of Fiscal Studies. Thank you very much, Dr. Boache. Now, let's zoom in straight to the issue of the fundamentals, what I call the fundamentals analogy.
Okay.
The Vice President is now saying that the fact that I said that if the fundamentals are weak, the currency, the exchange rate will expose you, does not mean that if the exchange rate or the cedi has devalued, it doesn't mean that the fundamentals are weak. And he showed the fundamentals, he says, indicates that it's not, the fundamentals are not weak. But there are those who are saying that he's simply shifting the goalposts.
Actually, he was trying to be a little bit more philosophical. You see, the fundamentals usually determine the long-run direction of the cedi exchange rate. But then in the short run, there are other factors that are involved. So definitely, if the fundamentals are weak, the cedi will be affected. But since there are other forces that are at play, those forces could also be working against the cedi, whereby the fundamentals are intact. That's what he's trying to explain.
But if we're looking at the fundamentals, what does it look like from what you said?
Generally, there have been improvements, generally. But it depends on which time frame are you talking about. If you're talking about maybe the last 4 or 5 years, there have been improvements. But if you go back to, say, the 2011, 2010s, then, you can't say the fundamentals are better than those years. So, yes, there have been improvements, but they are below the level that we want them to be.
And talking about fundamentals, there are some indicators, economic indicators, which the Vice President cited. But how about the fundamental, which is the fact that we're mainly a country that imports virtually everything, which then means that will severely put a strain on our currency, which is something which hasn't been fixed.
You see, when you're looking at fundamentals, you talk about those that are short term, those that are medium term, those that are long term. You were talking about those fundamentals that can only change in the long term.
All right.
But in the medium term, certain fundamentals like the fiscal position, the monetary position can be altered. And if they alter, it could help. Nevertheless, this country hasn't been able to alter the long-run fundamentals, which are basically bringing in more export revenue and put imports under check. These haven't been tackled for a very long time, for a very long time.
Now, during question time, one question that was asked, which I'm not sure was answered, has to do with the fact that where are the jobs to support or to show that indeed we have seen an improvement in the fundamentals?
You see, definitely what the government has done is this medium term, trying to massage, perhaps massage is not, trying to manipulate the fiscals in such a way that we are not overspending what we receive. So the deficit is not as high as it used to be in the past few years. And for that matter, from the fiscal perspective, you say yes, but these are medium term. But what I said about the long-term fundamentals, actually encouraging and trying to expand the productive base of the economy. These things haven't changed. And if they haven't changed, the jobs would not have come. That's why you see so much unemployment. That is what the country has to work on, improving the long-term fundamental. But I'm afraid the way these governments try to tackle this is not the right thing to do. It needs holistic approach, all hands on deck. Total policy decision taken by the politicians. But you see that the politicians are divided. While one government is in power, the other government wants to bring them down. And it is not the right thing to do. If you do that, you cannot improve the fundamentals, the true, genuine, productive base on long-term basis. Hence, our youth will always be looking for jobs that are not there.
Now, one of the things the Vice President also said was the number of measures he says are being put in place to ensure that the ports of Ghana become more competitive, which will mean that they're going to attract more imports and more goods are going to flow through it. There are those who say that by doing that, you're essentially opening up the economy. You're going to have a lot more imports coming through, and by that you're putting a further strain on the already shaky currency.
That is very true. The Vice President is looking at the fiscal revenue, and that's very crucial now. And for that matter, the government is saying, what can we do to increase fiscal revenue? Perhaps you can rake in more from the imports. And they think that, you know, by trying to get down import duties, to reduce import duties, the volumes will increase and more import duties could be reaped and add to the fiscal revenue. But the downside is what you just said. You know, imports are always higher than exports for a very long time. For a very long time. And if you are going to encourage imports without commensurate forces to encourage exports, what are you doing? You are widening the gap between imports and exports. And you are telling the current account that your deficit continue to expand. To even begin with, I'm not happy about the composition of our exports. Basically, there are three main commodities on the merchandise trade: cocoa, gold, and the current oil that you currently have. Cocoa is doing very well, not that it's doing in terms of how many we are producing, but cocoa is bringing in a lot of export revenue. Yes. For whatever we export, we get it as revenue. But look at, for instance, the new oil that we had. Ghana earns only about 20 to 25% of how much we export. So we export, say, 100 cedis, $100, we get only about $5 out of it. So on paper, you see that merchandise trade is doing well. Now the government is referring to the fact that there is surplus in the merchandise account. But how much out of that comes to the country to ease the foreign exchange?
But isn't that also a function of how much we invested ourselves? Because if we bring in foreigners to invest in the sector, then clearly they're going to take the money out.
You are an economist to begin. You know, that is exactly my point. We found oil, and we rushed to get foreign, investors to come in. If an investor is in the US, in UK, Europe, wherever, and they are rushing to invest their money in here, it means that business is very lucrative. You say you don't have money, but raising capital is not a one-day job. You can save towards it. You could even borrow towards it and invest in that lucrative business. The last time I checked, cost of producing oil is below $17 per barrel in Ghana. But look at how much the price of oil is now. It could even go up. So it's a very lucrative business. And if the country cannot plan to invest in its own, resources, then I'm afraid the country in the long term is in trouble.
Dr. Boakye, based on all that you've said, would you still say that the fundamentals of the economy are strong or weak?
Those that can be changed within medium term, they are okay, not that strong. For instance, look at the fiscals. You see, even though the deficit is somewhat lower relative to the previous 2, 3, 4 years, but then what is happening? We keep on cutting capital expenditure that is needed to expand the productive base of the economy because revenue is not coming in. But still, I commend the government for you cannot spend what you don't have. But the cost of it is that we are not investing as needed. So in the long run, like I just said, the youth will be looking for jobs that are just not there if the country does not sit down properly.
The Vice President then went on to also talk about a number of projects that are going to be rolled out across the country. He says there are going to be roads. He talked about the Sino Hydro facility, and there are going to be roads being constructed all across the country. Probably that will bring in the jobs that people are looking for.
It's good. Every little bit counts. But he mentioned about $1.5 billion. Yeah? It is just a drop in the sea. You need money. That was about 2 years ago when he went to China and he came down announcing about $19 billion. I was excited. This country needs real massive investment. 1.5 billion is okay, but let's look for more and trying to invest in the productive
Where are we
base of the
likely
economy.
to get that kind of money from?
The money to invest, I think the oil sector is there. The GNPC needs to be strengthened. Go to Nigeria. The oil that they produce, the country has about 60% stake in it. So the oil revenue generated, the country earns not less than 70%. In Ghana here, the country has less than 20% stake, at least for the current or the existing contracts. And for that matter, how much the oil that we export, oil revenue, you earn less than 25%. So if you do not gradually build up, you could even borrow, as you've been borrowing, and invest in that lucrative business. And if you are generating more revenue from your own resources God has endowed you with, then perhaps over a period of time, you'll be generating income to invest like we are talking about. You cannot leave the oil sector for those who have money outside the country to continue to reap it. But are the politicians sitting down? They are criticizing one another.
All right, thank you very much, Dr. Said Bwachi. Dr. Said Bwachi is an economist from the Institute of Fiscal Studies, and he joined us for some analysis on the address by the Vice President today at the Economic Town Hall meeting of the Economic Management Team. You're watching JoyNews Prime. We're taking a break, but still ahead in the bulletin. Police bodyguard of Lands and Natural Resources Minister fires warning shots to disperse defiant illegal miners at Nananko in the Western region.
He's just fired another warning shot. Still, so you can see in the background, the galamseyers are running away.
Parliament on Wednesday approved a petroleum agreement between government and American multinational oil firm ExxonMobil to drill oil in the Deepwater Cape 3 Points block. The agreement gives the American firm Ghana National Petroleum Corporation and Goil Offshore Ghana Limited approximately 1,400 square kilometer area south of the Jubilee block to drill oil from. A report of Parliament Finance Committee expressed concern the agreement gives too much waivers and tax reliefs to the U.S. firm. Minority spokesperson on finance Kasiela Tuforsin says the agreement is a badly negotiated one which shortchanges Ghana. He says its negotiators have caused financial loss to the state.
Income Tax Act, Act 896. We have said that subcontractors and affiliate companies providing services to ExxonMobil be reduced, the withholding tax for them should be reduced to 5% instead of 15%. And if you're a resident company, it should be reduced to 5% from the original 7.5%. That is a huge revenue loss. Again, on the back of that, what they are saying is that they want ExxonMobil to carry forward their losses. Carry forward their losses contrary to the act that says 5 years, in this case for 10 years. We are saying that capital allowances that should be charged for the year, you can do it forever. Again, we are saying the finance cost that should have been carried forward for 5 years, now we are saying 10 years. All of this has huge revenue implications, huge revenue implications. Those or whoever does that negotiation for Ghana has indeed caused financial loss to this country. He has messed us up big time. If this cabinet approved this, I beg to say that they should bow down their heads in shame because they have destroyed the revenue base for this country. I'm surprised that the Ministry of Finance supports this. I'm very surprised because under us, these are the very things that we opposed. These are the very things that we oppose. They came to government and within the first 6 months, they have approved it, obviously because they maybe don't understand what it means or they just decided to just approach it. Unfortunately, I'm sad. Today is a sad day for Ghana. We have lost huge revenue that could have been accrued to the government. The government is always complaining about revenues. But unfortunately, you've had a wonderful opportunity, but you've let it go. We have lost so much.
Are you able to put a figure to how much the expected loss will look like?
Before you do that, you have to come out to some assumption in terms of how much revenue that is going to accrue. But in the coming days, we will do the fine analysis and put a figure to it. But I can assure you, Ghana is losing billions of US dollars as a result of this passage. That one is for sure. We are going to lose so much. It's a bad deal.
But Deputy Energy Minister Dr. Mohamed Amin Andam says the oil exploration agreement is one of the best the nation has ever had.
With this current ExxonMobil, in spite of the waivers, or what others call exemptions, that we are granting to them, the total net oil that Ghana will get is up to 84%. And that is the highest so far in the history of our country. The last we had was 74% under the NDC. And with this, we are going to achieve 84%. And so if somebody tells you that it's a sell-off, we are shortchanging the country, the terms are not good. You can see from the net oil contribution that the country will get that is politics the person is doing. Secondly, if you look at the contracts they have signed in the past, and they say those contracts had better terms, how many were they? Between 2013 and 2016, they signed 13 contracts with so-called better fiscal terms. To date, as I speak to you, these companies are not performing. These companies were supposed to have spent $890 million US to drill 14 wells, exploration wells. Today, as I speak to you, not a single well has been drilled. And they've spent only 95 out of the 89 million, out of the $890 million they are supposed to have spent. And so you have companies that you sign contracts with, you say you have better fiscal terms, but these companies are not going to make discovery. And I've always said that 100% of zero is zero. We are looking for companies that are competent. And Exxon, you cannot contest the competency of Exxon, the capability of Exxon.
Now, it appears that many bureaucracies involved in regulating activities of illegal miners is doing more harm than good in the fight against galamsey. The Interministerial Committee, as part of government's move to sanitize the mining sector, vetted and issued stickers to qualified companies. But that sticker does not permit one to undertake mining exploration, at least not until an operating permit from the Minerals Commission is issued. Some mining firms are, however, said to be breaching the regulation by using the IMCG sticker as a license to mine. A case in point is TT Brothers, a mining company in the Western region. The company, with only an IMCG sticker, was busily mining for gold on the shoulders of the road at Nananko Wednesday morning. The bodyguard of the Lands and Natural Resources Minister had to fire multiple warning shots to disperse the defiant galamseyers. Latif Idris was there.
The police just fired another warning shot. Still, so you can see in the background, the galamseyers are running away upon hearing the warning shot by the police officer accompanying the minister. And there they are, kids as young as 3 years, 4 years, 5 years. They are all running away from the mining site here at Nananko, part of the Wassa enclave in the Western region.
Well, Latif Idris joins me on phone right now to tell us what transpired after that encounter. Hello, Latif. So what happened thereafter?
Okay, so Israel, after this whole skirmishes at the Nananko mining site, the minister's bodyguard managed to arrest the leader or the caretaker of that very site. When he was arrested, he told the minister that he is not the owner of the place. He is just a caretaker, and that TT Brothers owns the place. The minister and his team placed some calls in an attempt to get TT Brothers to respond to the allegation made by the caretaker of the concession. And no, that wasn't successful, so they were left with no other option but to take him to the nearest police station where he was made to write his statement. As at the time we were leaving the police station, he was still there, being kept by the police to help them with investigations. I must say that he wasn't the only person. In the reports that you just played, you realize there were a number of individuals at the mine site. All these guys, some of them managed to escape. Some of them were bold enough to stand there and face the minister, including the leader of the caretaker of the concession. All of them managed to escape, but then the team managed to arrest this very one and then put him before the police to get his statement and take it from there, Israel.
So are you done with your tour of the Western region, and where next will you be going to?
Yeah, so today the tour, we started from the Western North region and then ended up in the Ashanti region. We visited the C&J Alaska Mining Company, and it was such a sorry sight, Israel, I must say. If you look at 77 square kilometer of forest reserve, today we went there, and the whole place has been turned into a mine site. You will not find a single tree standing. I'm talking about 77 kilometers square. If you can do that calculation, you can understand the amount of green we are talking about. Today when we went there, it has all turned muddy, and we have dots of ponds and heaps of sand that have been created as a result of illegal mining that is ongoing on that concession. Illegal mining on the concession of C&J Alaska Mining. So I asked the MD of the company why we are having illegality ongoing on his concession. Now, he told me point blank that he has no hand in what is going on, and that the illegal miners are on their own because, as we speak, Israel, C&J and Alaska are in court with the Interministerial Committee on Illegal Mining. Why? Because the Interministerial Committee went on the concession and seized some of the equipment of C&J and Alaska, and also ordered them to cease operations. So as we speak, they are not working, and so that is the defense put up by the MD of C&J, that he has been prevented from accessing his concession. He's not been able to access the concession for a very long time now, so he has no idea what has been happening on that concession. Now that is disputed by the sector minister, Kwekwa Sumacheme, who says it is very obvious that C&J and Alaska are aware, and maybe they are part of the Galamsey activities ongoing on that mine site. So he's ordered that going forward is going to be tough on the company and ensure that they do not repeat some of these infractions that they've been undertaking over the period. Now, we also moved to a very famous forest, one of the forest reserves in Ghana. That is the Apamprama Forest Reserve in the Ashanti region. And if you recall, sometime about 2 months ago, the forest guards of the Forestry Commission and the Interministerial Committee Against Illegal Mining clashed over some illegality that was ongoing in the forest reserve. So today the minister went there, Israel, to see firsthand the damage that is being caused by activities of illegal miners who have, they've raised, today when we went there, they've raised makeshift structures and are getting ready to pillage the forest.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much, Latif Idris, with that update there. Now, the University of Education, Winneba, is to reopen on Monday, April 8th, after violent student protests caused it to be shut down. Students are expected to report to school on April 9 for academic activities to resume. The Governing Council has also reinstated all 3 lecturers sacked by the Vice Chancellor of the University, Professor Anthony Afulbroni. A statement issued by the Council reads: since the closure of the university on March 14, 2019, following student unrest, the Governing Council has received several pleas and calls from well-meaning personalities, traditional authorities, stakeholders, and the civil society urging to work diligently within the shortest possible time to ensure that normalcy is restored to the 2 campuses at Winneba and Ejimako. The Governing Council took all the pleas in good faith and held wide consultations and interactions with several individuals in leadership positions since the release of its widely published press statement of March 18, 2019, with the ultimate goal of re-establishing a peaceful environment on the 2 campuses for academic work to resume. Now, it continues. The Governing Council finds the current state of affairs very worrying on the following grounds. 1, the current state of affairs is attracting negative reportage for the university on the media landscape, which does not augur well for institutional branding and development. 2, the Governing Council acknowledges that it has the ultimate responsibility to ensuring that lasting peaceful environment for academic work is established on our campuses, and it continues. On account of the above, the Governing Council hereby reviews its disciplining the decisions of March 7, 2019, which affected 3 lecturers, and pardons them accordingly. Now, Parliament is asking the General Legal Council to reopen the period for remarking of the 2017-2018 exam scripts so students who failed can take advantage of it. The House is also asking the Ghana School of Law to reduce their remarking fee from 3,000 cedis to 500 cedis so the students can apply for remarking. The students petitioned Parliament last month after more than 80% of those who wrote last year's exams failed. Chairman of Parliament's Legal Affairs Committee, Ben Abdullah, has been detailing the committee's recommendations.
1. Reducing the current remarking fee from 3,000 per paper to 500 Ghana cedis. 2. Reopening the period for remarking to enable the students who could not apply for the remarking to do so. 3. Adopting off-site marking retreat to ensure speedy remarking of scripts. 4. Making all marking schemes and examiners' reports available to students and lecturers of the Ghana School of Law. And 5. The IEC to consider holding supplementary examinations for all referred candidates in the 2018 Professional Law Course examinations in a timely manner to ensure that successful candidates are enrolled in this year. The committee has planned to engage all stakeholders in the legal education sector to consider the Legal Profession Amendment Bill 2018, which has been laid in the House and currently before the committee. Finally, Mr. Speaker, the committee has already received 2 proposals from lecturers of the Ghana School of Law for reforming professional legal education in Ghana, and will consider same together with other proposals that may be submitted by other stakeholders.
SRC President at the Ghana School of Law, Kwabna Owusu-Amoah, says they are generally satisfied with the recommendations of Parliament and is urging the General Legal Council to adopt it.
That they are all concerned with the issues that we are facing at the School of Law and the issues with legal education in general. We hope that the General Legal Council will also consider these recommendations, and as the minority leader said, they should also carry on with the investigations into the appropriateness of the questions and consider that when making their final determinations. We've always said that this year we've had a crash program. We've had a lot of challenges because of the 1-year system. It has been reversed to 2 years. Some of the problems still persist. We hope that most of these problems will be solved and we have a better future of legal education. They also mentioned that the Act 32 amendment bill is here, and we hope that there are going to be proper reforms, that is reforming the entire legal education, right from the entrance exam level to the final stage, so that we are all benefits and the country as a whole will benefit from proper legal education.
I am Israel. You have a good night.